22.5 years in prison.
Maybe that is, he set an example out of other dirty cops here. It's good that it's bad what he did, but he's not shot other black men here. And they say he has no criminal charges, which is true, but the police won't, they didn't charge him for it.
Right. Well, thank you, ma'am, very much for talking to us. I know it's kind of hard to get some information here, but 22.5 years. Thank you very much, ma'am. So, Lester, again, kind of a situation here where we're trying to get as much reaction as we can. And again, word is starting to trickle out. The judge said the sentence first in months, so people are trying to make the calculation here again to 22.5 years. But, sir, the situation here, the sentence just handed down 22.5 years. We just spoke.
I have to pee. I'll be back in 1 second.
From Chicago.
Okay?
What's your reaction?
Guilty was served. I don't think that that's enough time to send the message that needs to be sent to say that justice is trying to work for people of color. It's a dent, but we still feel empty today. We feel empty because it still feels like twisted justice in which we're all so accustomed to, but we did get a guilty, and then we did get time, but we just feel void today. It still feels void.
Thank you very much, sir. So, Lester, again, some conflicting feelings here. Some folks, you may be able to hear somebody behind me. There's a bit of anger here that they wanted more. Certainly, many people in this community, they had wanted the maximum, up to 40 years. Legal experts, of course, said that wasn't likely. Prosecutors asked for 30 years. So, again, 22.5 years for Derek Chauvin on that second-degree murder charge. A mixed reaction so far. Some people saying it was enough, so they wanted more than 20 at least. Others, as you can hear in the distance, perhaps there is some anger. They wanted more, Lester. So we're continuing to grab to get reaction here as this crowd continues to grow. But for now, I'm going to send that back to you, Lester.
All right, Gabe, thanks very much. 22.5 years. That would put Mr. Chauvin at 67 when he is released from prison. Let's go to Paul Butler right now. Paul, is this in the neighborhood of where you thought the judge might come down in this case?
It's actually higher, Lester. The judge essentially threw the book at Mr. Chauvin. 22 years, that's a new precedent in Minnesota. The only other officer to be convicted of murder in that state got 12.5 years. So the judge said his sentence was about legal analysis.
Mohammed Noor got 12.5 years for murdering, what was I'm forgetting her name now, the victim's name.
This case will impact other officers. This is
a
tough sentence. Mr. Chauvin will not see the light of day.
I don't think people understand the significance of
hopefully that will
putting a cop in jail for a murder during the putting a cop in jail and serving justice. And the reason why people are so fucking upset all the time and in the streets is because of precisely how difficult it is to throw a cop in jail for murdering someone on the job. Okay? Half the time you can't even throw cops in jail for murdering people off the fucking job, let alone on the job. And in Minnesota, that was not a thing that ever happened. Never happened for a white cop murdering a black person on the job. And the only time it happened was with Mohammed Noor. And it was for 12.5 years. So anyway.
For justice for him, and we're going to keep supporting all these other families, including for. Love y'all. Big up.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, man. I'm trying to let y'all motherfuckers know if y'all ain't independent media, fuck y'all. And fuck your story, and fuck everything you cover.
Okay. What the fuck's going on here? I hope that the fairness exhibited here is extended to everyone. I turned off the audio for a second. They're having a hard time filming right now.
Independent media, fuck you. Straight the fuck up. I'm black every fucking second. This man is black every second. This is not a fucking story. We're not zoo exhibits. We're not fucking animals. I fought American justice more than anyone else in history.
Do you think it's a good sentencing? Yes, I think it's a good sentence. I do. But, you know, people will disagree with me on that. But with everything I believe as far as like rehabilitative justice and with everything I believe, yes, I think 22.5 years is a decent sentence. Anyway, Van Jones disagrees. He was disappointed. Okay. He's only getting 15 years. You're saying because he's going to be out on good behavior? Yeah, I know. I understand that. But ultimately, that's not something that you're considering when you're giving people their sentencing.
From this. I dedicated my life to this fight for justice, and none of these fucking corporate media. All y'all care about is black trauma. They was labeled black trauma and putting it on display.
Like, for the people who are
the most thorough research documented of American injustice.
He's also a cop in prison, so just remember that.
I can prove to the chief, international chief of police. And now we got the fucking police. Is anyone from the media going to cover this?
Hey, can we get everybody back in the circle, please? Hey, everybody back in the circle, please.
Right on.
Let's not be all over. Can we get everybody back in the circle? Hey, can we get everybody back in the circle, please?
Why are there non-violent offenders serving? Why are there non-violent drug offenders serving longer sentences is a great question. Because of America's incredibly draconian attitude towards crime and punishment. That's why. But the proper approach with a focus on rehabilitative justice is not to say, like, throw the book at, like, every single person. The proper approach, focusing on rehabilitative justice, is to say that this is a decent sentencing, and that that sympathy, timed tenfold, should be extended to all nonviolent offenders that are in prison for ridiculous charges. There's an old black man that just recently got out of prison after serving like 60 years or some shit in jail or in prison for stealing 2 T-shirts. Like, this is basically what I talk about with respect to the American criminal justice system. It's ridiculous. It's horrifying.
Awakened to this issue in a new way. George Floyd likely, let's hope, did not die in vain.
Terry, thank you. And we're seeing more people there in Minneapolis showing up at that memorial site.
Why are you comparing it to nonviolent criminals? I'm not the one comparing it to nonviolent criminals. Chatter just brought it up.
For healing the country that has been through so much over the course of the last year. Ben Crump himself says one step closer to healing. And I see you've been talking to a lot of people about this.
Well, you know, I think for so many people, it's hard not to feel the personal effects of this, even as Terry just talked about.
Sorry, it wasn't 67 years. It was a 20-year prison sentence for stealing 2 shirts.
The mom of a black son,
the man's name was Guy Frank.
I mean, but we all witnessed this, and we went through this case and this trial. So it's been a traumatic time, I think, for a lot of people. We know that there's still more charges to come.
I said 67,
charges in this case.
But that was his age. I fucked up the number.
The chapter on this part of the George Floyd story, and I do believe that for some people there will be some measure of satisfaction. Doesn't happen very often, particularly when it is a black person who was lost at the hands of police. But I think for a number of people, and certainly I would say for this mom, it is nice to see that this case is sort of put to rest, at least for now. And I think that for a lot of people, this will be maybe some measure of healing.
Like you said, closing one chapter. There still is more to this story.
Absolutely.
Deborah, thank you so much. And thanks to our entire team for the coverage of Derek Chauvin's sentencing, 22.5 years in prison. Our coverage on this story continues on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. Of course, we'll have a full wrap-up on this and that breaking news out of Florida, that 12-story building collapse. Our David Muir is there covering the tragic events. He will be there live tonight for World News Tonight. For the entire team, I'm Whit Johnson in New York. Have a good day.
He will have to be in solitary for most of his sentence. His situation is not going to be good in prison. He's a fucking murderer cop. Cops in general don't have a good time in prison, okay? Like, they are at the same level as, like, pedophiles in prison. They will get murdered in general population. Okay? I don't even know if they can get, I don't even know if they can be around other pedophiles that would still probably murder them. Which is, so he's not going to have a fun time in prison. It's not like a cakewalk, if that is any solace or comfort for those who are looking for vindication and revenge from the criminal justice system. Okay? So to all of the draconian Andes, I understand why you would be very angry in seeing blood in this circumstance, and knowing what you do, knowing what you know about our... knowing what you know about this particular instance of cold-blooded murder. Do you think it's okay that cops can get extrajudicially murdered in prison? No. The other part of that is that will literally be used as a way to maybe even, well... We'll see what happens, but that circumstance could be used to lower his sentence down the line. People who are saying he might get out on good behavior in 15 years. That's true. He could. Fuck rehabilitation. He's a racist murderer. Okay. Once again, I understand where you're coming from in this. Because of how passionate everyone feels about the situation. But remember what we talk about all the time with respect to rehabilitative justice. Our justice system doesn't create justice. It creates resentment, pain, and suffering. Anyone looking for justice in sentencing hearing is looking in the wrong place. Yes. This guy will get to start a new life in 15 years. George Floyd doesn't. Yeah, I know. I understand. I have this conversation about nearly every single offense. Unfortunately, when talking to Americans, there are a couple issues that the American leftist audience routinely loses their principles on. The criminal justice system being rehabilitative rather than focusing on the extended length of sentencing and more punitive is one of those instances. And the other one is sex and sex work and sexuality in general. Americans are very puritanical and lose their shit when it comes to sex, and have like really backwards points of view on sex and sexuality. And they have really backwards views on the criminal justice system as they routinely advocate for harsher sentencing. Overall, from my point of view, knowing what I know and also my principles that I believe in, I believe that the 22.5-year sentence is decent. Remember, this is not justice. This is the justice system taking the first step for the first time. Possibly. Wait, hold on one second. for the first time possibly ever, bringing this sort of conviction. You know what I mean? So it's a first step towards justice. Justice would be making him learn CRT. Okay, shut the fuck up. It's nuts how reactionary the left get when it comes to revenge. Personally, I would not want the death sentence. I may happen to be murdered. It is insane not to give another a chance to rehabilitate. Yes. Being draconian back isn't the solution, is what you're saying, right? Yes, that's what I'm saying. That is what I'm saying. And ultimately, what I'm also saying here is that, like, the 22-year sentence is not only a decent sentence for this murderer, but also is a good way to show the rest of the country and the cops that, like, hey, there is a fraction of accountability coming your way if you do act this way. So it is still incredibly significant. Okay. I mean, if you act this way and get caught on video, yeah. I wonder if him being caught will lead to the friction with prison guards and the such. Maybe good behavior isn't a given. Isn't that the same logic as mandatory minimums? I mean, it would be the same logic as mandatory minimums if we literally had, like, any sort of fucking accountability within the criminal justice system for cops behaving this way, but we don't. So, like, this is one of the few instances where there's, like, at least a specific way of showing, like, here, there are some punishments that will get doled out if you act out. At a certain point, if you have a child and you're trying to educate your child on what not to do, at a certain point, you have to draw a line. Like, as someone who believes in reforming the criminal justice system, I don't say that there is no need for prisons at all, or that there's no need for even the police force in general. There always are going to be laws, and law and order should be always be well defined and maintained. So, you know, this is a step towards that. Anarchists in shambles. I mean, anarchists, even prison abolitionists understand that there are, like, edge cases where taking someone away from the rest of society is a necessity. It's just more so about democratizing that decision as best as possible, and all of the other decisions leading up to that. Anarchy is about the abolition of unjust hierarchies, not hierarchies for the sake of existence. Like, hierarchy, it's not about abolishing hierarchy for the sake of there being a hierarchy. Well, maybe some anarchists do believe that, but anyway. Okay? This is the judge's conclusion for on the 22-page explanation. Part of the mission of the Minneapolis Police Department is to give citizens voice and respect. Here, Mr. Chauvin, rather than pursuing the MPD mission, treated Mr. Floyd without respect and denied him the dignity owed to all human beings, which he certainly would have extended to a friend or neighbor. In the court's view, 270 months, which amounts to an additional 10 years over the presumptive 150-month sentence, is the appropriate sentence. Yeah. Anarchy is about abolishing all hierarchies. Unjust hierarchies can be considered to be the goal of every ideology because unjustified is entirely subjective. Okay, my bad, positive person. Once again, our favorite Anarchitty in the chat chimes in. Yes, dude. Good luck abolishing all hierarchies. Got it. Like, even when I try to redeem anarchism, you, like, literally turn around and have to be like, no, actually, it is ridiculous. Like, no, the worldview is ridiculous. I know all the other anarchities also going to fucking now chime in and be like, no, you're literally wrong. So justifiable hierarchies need to also be abolished. So just we will live in a world without any hierarchy whatsoever. Got it. Yes, always. Yes, I do mention this a lot, but yes, anarchists might have some strange views, but they're very present and helpful with activism/protest and mutual aid. Yes, they are. They're at the forefront of social justice as well, regardless of what their worldview might be. Yes, abolish parents, abolish mods, abolish all forms of regulation, abolish all forms of laws which are built upon hierarchy, the notion of hierarchy. Like, anarchy is when I want to break the law, but then someone tells me I shouldn't do that and violates my freedom and my personal liberty to be able to break the law. Good one. Okay. Let's continue. The law only exists to serve the needs of the bourgeoisie. Yeah, like, yeah, correct. Like, you know, statutory rape. Just serving the needs of the bourgeoisie. Very good. No good. There are no good laws in the books. Is a really solid approach to this. You can say that the bourgeoisie routinely break it, okay? You can say that the capital-owning class routinely skirt the law in a similar capacity to how, like, Western nations have built this idea of human rights exclusively to just bully other developing nations and justify their violations of human rights in an effort to stop the violations of human rights that are occurring in smaller nations. You say something like that, but ultimately, like, throwing human rights out in the trash across the board is a silly approach, I think. And if you have laws, you're always going to need a regulatory force, whether it's completely democratized or not. There is going to be a regulatory force that, you know, that is organized and maintains the law. Okay. What's next? A license to toast in your own damn toaster? Yes. I think all laws and regulations are bad, which is why I think wearing a seatbelt is silly. That's the nanny state stopping me from wanting to, you know, wanting to get just be significantly more damaged and injured in a car accident than otherwise. Real men fly out the car window, brother. Come on, the liberals in your chat will think all anarchists are like that? No, but the fucking most vocal ones are annoying sometimes and do take like a relatively cringe POV on how the world works. And, you know, sometimes I like making fun of that for a brief moment. Sometimes it is literally every day. Okay, well, fucking, you know, there's Marxist-Leninists that have cringe-ass points of view, too. Kill me? Okay, trigger warning. Ted Cruz. I don't want to watch Ted Cruz mansplaining. Okay, let's watch Tucker Carlson. I was going to talk about this already. We were going to talk about CRT and Tucker Carlson's like incredible POV on critical race theory. He got very upset that General Milley said something along the lines of like, you know, don't accuse me of being woke because I read Lenin. I read the works of Lenin and Mao. That doesn't mean I'm a gosh darn communist. Just like, I guess, reading CRT or critical race theory or things that Republicans consider to be critical race theory will not make me a fucking woke. So, Ben Shabibo was very upset at it too. Here, let's point out that, like, here was the General Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, just now on critical race theory, talking about wokeness. Ben Shapiro says, and yet Marx and Lenin aren't on Milley's recommended reading list because the military isn't generally in the business of presenting despicable anti-American views to its members worthy of consideration. I love this take, like, that Marx and Lenin are despicable anti-American views. Says Ben Shapiro, I wonder... Actually, you know what? I am going to respond to this. I love that Karl Marx hated America when he literally wrote fawning letters to none other than Abraham fucking Lincoln. You know? Kind of a strange take from Shabibo here. Marx literally thought America was ripe for revolution. Like, he was a bit of an Ameriboo and loved Abraham Lincoln and sent him letters. So it's kind of cool that he's like, you know, he's taking this like completely ahistorical approach. I'm gonna tweet. I'm gonna fucking reply to it. Said, yeah, famous anti-American Karl Marx who literally wrote fawning letters to Abe Lincoln. Dumbass. They love talking about how, like, Abe Lincoln is a Republican. Abe Lincoln is a Republican, but, you know. Here you go. Here, I linked it. There you go, boys. Here, get it fired up for you, okay? Get that fucking ratio fired up for you. We are going to go into the critical race theory part of the broadcast once again. Totally made up concept, manufactured outrage, incredibly successful. Republicans, once again, doing a remarkable job. I work to support an education technology company, and if I get one more call about CRT from a parent, I'm going to lose it. It's so funny that, like, they just manufacture this fucking drama, and then everybody talks about it. So race theory, fake science, global warming, real science? What? Race theory? What do you mean by that? Do we have a race realist in the chat? God damn, boys, what the fuck? We can't even do a 10-second ratio like we used to. We've lost it. I think my man thought critical race theory is like phrenology or something. Also, like, it's not even a hard science if that's what you think it is. Like, boom. Okay. All right, let's now go to Tucker Carlson going absolutely fucking bananas over the...
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. Want to hear an amazing story?
He's just gonna go buck wild. Okay, trigger warning. Tucker Carlson going buck wild, just straight the fuck up, just WASP nationalism, baby. A little bit of white genocide rhetoric in here. I mean, let's just watch.
The benefit of being both true and illuminating. Here it is. In 1851, a man called Samuel Cartwright came up with a fairly sophisticated scientific explanation for why so many slaves were running away from plantations in the American South. These fugitive slaves, Cartwright explained, were suffering from a medical disorder. It was called drapetomania. It was a syndrome characterized by an uncontrollable or insane impulsion to wander. So that was the problem. It wasn't that they disliked being enslaved or yearned for freedom and basic humanity. No. The problem, according to Samuel Cartwright, was that black people as a group were inherently defective. They were drapetomaniacs. They were always running away. That's what he said.
Please don't tell me he's going to compare this, like, phrenology laden psychotic race realist race scientist to the critical race theory. Oh my fucking lord. Oh yes, he is going to do that, obviously, of course.
107 years later, it is embarrassing to repeat something this stupid out loud. It's so obviously insane. But here's what you should know. Drapetomania was taken very seriously at the time, and so was Samuel Cartwright. Cartwright was not a fringe character at all. He was a nationally prominent physician, a former high-ranking Army officer from Fairfax, Virginia. He went to Penn Medical School. Samuel Cartwright was a credentialed man of science who commanded...
Okay, I have to point out the inherent irony here because I know where he's going to. What he's going to say is like, this is just the same as white rage. Categorizing whiteness as a disease is inappropriate and unfortunate. We are repeating the mistakes of the past. Now, what is remarkable here is that in an effort to devalue, like, I don't know, the analysis of like white supremacist undertones in American history, he's literally describing how white supremacy could be so fucking pervasive that someone who went to medical school could be a prominent white supremacist, which is kind of something that people should learn about, Tucker. That's the point. Okay, let's keep going.
The respect of the country. 50 years after the Civil War, one of this nation's leading medical dictionaries continued to maintain an entry for drapetomania. So in retrospect, of course, we would call Samuel Cartwright a bigot, which he undoubtedly was. But he was also more than that. Cartwright was a practitioner of something called scientific racism. Scientific racism is deeper than simple prejudice. It is the use of science to justify the dominance of one group over another group. Scientific racism has a history as long as science, simply because the impulse to dominate is inherent to human nature. So it's not really about color, though it's called racism. Instead, it's about power. Martin Luther King wrote eloquently about this. So did Dr. Seuss, by the way. You might want to take a look at what they wrote, assuming you can still buy their books. The point is, scientific racism never actually went away.
What?
It's still with us. No one talks about drapetomania anymore. Instead, our medical...
Is he saying that, like, there's race realism happening in medical schools that, like, literally believe that whiteness is like a genetic condition? Oh my fucking God, dude. That's great. In an effort to devalue education that revolves around teaching people systemic racism, he gave a clear-cut example of how pervasive white supremacy was in American history, that it literally seeped into like the medical profession. And the dominant theory at the time was race realist and eugenicist in nature, only to then turn around and be like, this is exactly like teaching people systemic racism and its impact in contemporary American society. That's fucking awesome, dude.
Medical professionals and law professors and military leaders and politicians and cable news hosts have identified a new disorder they claim explains everything bad. It's called whiteness. In the universities, it has become an article of faith.
There is no medical disorder. Like, there is no whiteness as a medical... Oh, shit.
That were it not for the indelible stain of whiteness, America could be a utopia. Only whiteness stands in the way. That's why we must abolish it. As Harvard Magazine put it, abolish the white race. Only then can we be happy. Lots of people seem to believe this. They're not all...
Okay. Harvard Magazine abolished the white race. I just like, he's just like dropping all this shit. I gotta go into it and see what he's referencing here. What? Oh, Noel Ignatiev, scholar who called for abolishing whiteness, dies at age 78. He wrote a book in 1995 called How the Irish Became White. And his concept was, he worked around race and class in his call to abolish whiteness. And I guess, like, I don't know enough about this theory, but judging by like a quick cursory glance on what this is, seems like he means the concept of whiteness is built around exclusion, which unironically is kind of what, you know, people like Tucker Carlson try to explain. Or I guess he's talking about, yeah, when race becomes black and white, writers confront their personal histories. In the interest of survival, Afro-Americans have always studied whiteness. There's a long tradition among them that the white race is a particular sort of social formation. Yeah, whiteness as a concept. Okay, whiteness as a concept is a pure fabrication. White people have grown in size and it's become more over-encompassing. I'm white, depending on who you're talking to. I'm white in America, certainly not considered white in a place like Germany because of my Turkish background. But even then, once people recognize that I'm a Muslim, Turkish person, then all of a sudden I'm no longer white. Do you understand? Benny Franks did not consider Italians to be white. He did not even consider Germans to be white. He considered them to be swarthy at the time. Okay? The Irish were not considered white. The Polish were not considered white. Slavs were never considered white. Ironic that so many Poles are fucking neo-Nazis now, but, you know, that's besides the point. Let's not get into that. Whiteness as a concept is ever expanding, right? The only people that will never be white, no matter what, are black people. Partially because whiteness as a concept comes from the exclusion of blackness, or how far removed you are from being black, as evidenced by the one drop rule, as evidenced by the fact that we don't think Obama is a white person. We think Obama is a black person, even though he's half black. So, whenever people have theorized about whiteness or race as a social construct, this is precisely what they're talking about. When they say abolish whiteness, this is what they're talking about. It doesn't mean murder white people, okay? But this is precisely what white nationalists believe. White nationalists believe in that outdated form of racial purity, which is precisely why they say white genocide is occurring. Because they think that miscegenation causes the eradication of the white race. Think about that for a second. White genocide is caused by non-white people having consensual sex with white people. And white people, as a concept, has grown throughout time, too. So it's like people that you would never consider white are now considered white. This is why I make fun of white genocide all the time on the show, but most people don't realize it, and most people don't understand it. Like, it's not a real concept. It's like a unicorn. It's a made-up idea. Like the Easter Bunny. Okay? Because if you believe that, like, people being in, like, loving marriages or having loving relationships with one another and having children together is eradicating your race in a systemic and targeted capacity similar to a genocide, then that's not a real genocide. You're just a fucking psychopathic racist. And Tucker Carlson is one. So, you know, don't get caught up in the spicy language when people talk about abolishing the white race. They're simply referencing whiteness as a concept that is ever expanding.
All bad people, just as not everyone who believed in Samuel Cartwright in the 1850s was evil. Some people are just gullible. They're looking for meaning in their lives. If you hand them a unified theory of everything, some percentage of them are going to buy it wholesale. There were nice people at Jonestown in Guyana. They just didn't know any better. It's their leaders that you wonder about. They do know better, or they should. And when they talk about this new iteration of scientific racism...
Yeah, I love that Tucker Carlson is, like, criticizing scientific racism when, you know, he had Charles Murray on his show.
Political ambitions. Let's say that again for emphasis, because it is the secret to the entire immigration debate. Casting ballots.
Or he talked about Charles Murray, I guess. He didn't have Charles Murray on.
He's serving as a people.
He used Charles Murray. Did he have Charles Murray on? Or oh no. Oh, here it is.
So that if you have, well, I have the data in the book. Essentially, you have registered nurses. And we have data on fairly large numbers of registered nurses, black and white. And the difference in mean IQ between the two of those is a dozen IQ points, which is a lot. It means you have a whole lot of extremely able.
Wow, that's really crazy that Tucker Carlson doesn't seem to have a problem with race realism and race science here, considering Charles Murray is literally one of the fathers of like modern race realism with his Bell theory or bell curve a theory about you know, the IQ mean amongst like different races, and he is literally advocating for it here on his show. So that's kind of cool that Tucker Carlson doesn't seem to have a problem with race science here. 8 facts? Facts? Really? So you're so fucking stupid that you would assume that, like, just because someone is saying that, like, here are some data points, that you would believe in, like, race science too, like phrenology and skull measurements? Is that what you're gonna say? Like, it's facts, bro. What a self-report. What an incredible self-report right there.
Black nurses. You have some incompetent white nurses, but it does mean you have a difference in job performance. And that's eventually going to be reflected in income as well. It's going to be reflected in the nature of their careers and the nature of how they end up and so forth. Same thing goes with virtually all kinds of jobs. The same thing goes for the kinds of jobs people end up in, so that you have entry into certain.
Abolish white race is such terrible optics, though. Yeah, dude. Yeah, well, that's why it's in fucking Harvard, okay? It's in like it's in academic papers talking about social sciences and race as a construct, and not in fucking Twitch chat, okay? Like, there's a little bit more than like saying abolish whiteness, especially when you're talking about it as like a fucking social construct. God damn, this like optic shit is understandable in certain ways. It's understandable in certain ways, but it's so fucking stupid when you have that argument about like academia. Sorry, Sweaty. I really want you to, you know, think about the optics so that like one day some psychopathic reactionary could use this against you. Like, I say this when it comes to certain lectures. Like, the optics argument in certain lectures makes sense. Okay? Like, if you're doing a lecture, then the lecture, if you're doing a lecture in West Point, then that's absolutely going to be weaponized against you. So in certain instances, optics can matter. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. What matters is the source material. But when it comes to like academic papers and shit, like, yeah, the optics argument is so stupid.
Certain kinds of occupations is limited.
Especially if you are a free speech defender, which most of these people are. It's like, you know, considering your framework from how the opposition will bastardize it and, I don't know, devalue your own point of view or your own theoretical framework is like literally unironically anti-free speech in that way.
Because the cognitive demands of those occupations mean that a whole lot of more white people qualify than black people, and even a higher.
If you want people to join your cause, it has to be
qualify.
easy to understand and hard to misunderstand. Yeah, except we're not talking about propagandists here. We're talking about people who are studying the issue and are completely lost in the sauce of their own, like, in their own circles. Like, you're talking about academic papers on social issues and social sciences. So remember, that person that's posting that is not like, yeah, I'm doing this because I want it to be propagandized in the future. Okay?
Than white people. These are all differences which are driven not by irrational racism. They are driven by day-to-day realities of job performance and the responses of supervisors to job performances. And
this part of Tucker's show isn't allowed on TV, by the way. It's the bonus web show they do on the Fox News app /Slight. They occasionally use highlights during his main show, but they're never long.
The demands of the market. I'm not saying all of it, by the way. In all of this, you know, in talking about these things, is Murray saying that racism is no longer a factor in American life? No. Racism is a factor in American life. I'm saying that you can't understand the size of the factor.
Remember when fucking Sam Harris had this guy on and like went out to bat for him? That was pretty cool. Big time liberal, by the way. I love the big time liberal Sam Harris, like unironically having Charles Murray on his show and then defending that decision.
It is without understanding the proportion of the differences that are reasonable and logical and predictable.
Immediate self-report for anyone is just like taking IQ as a serious metric for, like taking IQ as a serious metric for anything. Okay? Double self-report if you tie IQ to genetics, which he does regularly. This is his bread and butter. Okay? Anyway. Believe me, I'm taking a Facebook IQ. This is I got 130. I'm actually really smart. Oh, for sure. You don't think Asian people are smarter than white people? You can acknowledge differences between races and still believe in equality? What? No, I don't believe Asian people are smarter than white people, you fucking moron. What? Dude, that's so funny. Dude, no, that's not a real thing, okay? That unironically also, look. I'm going to be as nice as possible. I'm going to be as charitable as possible to that person who just dropped that notion in here. Okay? And assume that he was just like misguided and that's why he's saying this, okay? But no, I don't think that there is one race of people that's smarter than another race of people, even on average, and it certainly has nothing to do with race. If IQ was a well-defining metric and you could absolutely consider it, if you absolutely could like look at genes, then no such studies would exist on IQ tests done on people in India over the course of like a drought season and subsequent famine versus like non-drought and better material conditions on the same exact people, where IQ points differentiate by like all the way up to 12%. It's or not 12%, by 12 points. It is ridiculous. It's completely reliant. Not only is it a silly metric for success, and I say this as someone who's dumb as fuck from an IQ point of view, I guess. Not that I know what my IQ is. I've never taken one of these tests. I just assume it's low. It's not a valid measure for it's not an accurate measure for anything. But beyond that, it's certainly idiotic to tie it back to genetics when so many environmental factors stand in the way. Just bitter about low IQ? Yeah, dude, I'm so bitter. My life is so dog shit. It's terrible, dude. Anyway. IQ stands for assault rifle. It's true. All right. So yeah, race. Tucker hates race realism unless he's like literally having the father of like contemporary race realism on his other show.
Racism. When they talk about whiteness, they sound very much like old-fashioned bigots. Take this guy, for example. His name is Eric Michael Dyson. He's a tenured professor at some stupid college or other. He lives in a rich, almost exclusively white neighborhood. He goes on television a lot. Watch him as he talks about race and ask yourself, honestly,
I love when people say this, when it's like, I can't believe this black person is like living in an nearly exclusively white neighborhood. It's like, yeah, that's kind of the point, dude. Like, how is that any different than being like, why aren't there that many black billionaires? Why aren't there that many successful black people? Let's not examine the socioeconomic conditions that we subjected black people to on the virtue of their race, and instead just keep asking that question and let it hang there, as though there's something inherently like wrong or bad about blackness, and that there are some intrinsic qualities that we simply cannot say because it's just a scary truth that no one wants you to discuss. No, it's just incorrect. It's literally external factors, you fucking moron. I wonder why there aren't that many black people in the probably nice neighborhood that he lives in. Let's think. Let's think for a moment. But no, because the entire purpose of this fucking broadcast from Tucker Carlson is to make you not think about those reasons, okay? That's the point. There are either internal or external reasons for why black people are in these demonstrate like a larger percentage of poor people in American statistics. Okay, like there's a reason. There has to be a reason. It's either intrinsic or extrinsic. Which are the factors? If you believe that it's external, okay, if you believe that there are outside factors, you believe in systemic racism. You believe in the structural inequality that black people were subjected to. Okay. If you believe in the intrinsic internal factors, then you're fucking racist. It's that simple. You believe that like they have a genetic predisposition to poverty. It's that simple. It's not that hard. Just like at the top of the hour, there's a fucking 6-second ad break, and that's not that hard either. You know this. It's coming. You throw your tomatoes. But fear not, if you'd like to no longer see the ads at the top of the hour, every hour, then you can do something. That's something you can do is subscribe. You can subscribe for $5, or you can subscribe for free with a Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account. Now, also, you can use an ad blocker, or you can use a VPN, but there are ways. You can also admit that that was a solid-ass segue, baby. Come on. It's fine. No, but like I said already, here's the ad, by the way. That stupid college is Vanderbilt, by the way. He got his PhD from Princeton, but mentioning his real credentials isn't as helpful to Tucker, just as delegitimizing academia. Yeah. So what I'm trying to point out here is that like this concept of racial inequality is a lot more simple than the way that like people like Tucker Carlson try to make it out to be. Obviously, there's more nuance to it. There's more context to it. And you can have that conversation in academia, as many do, right? And then Tucker will then bastardize that stuff and make it seem like people are just trying to generate white. They're just trying to make white people out to be the villains or whatever, like all white people unconditionally. So I guess what I am trying to say is it's a lot more simple. You can simplify it. Either there are external factors or internal factors. If you believe that if you believe that like black people are in the conditions that they're in for internal reasons, then you believe that they are genetically predisposed to violence or to be in poverty conditions, to be in lower socioeconomic conditions. If you believe in external factors, then you understand that it's systemic racism that has put them in said conditions and have made it exceptionally difficult to get out of those conditions.
If he sounds any different at all from, say, Bull Connor or David Duke, he doesn't. Only the colors have changed. Here he is.
And speaking about, you know, the maggots, I'm sorry, the MAGA, that is so corrosive in this, you know, political moment. And we have.
Tucker Carlson is upset that Eric Dyson, who is a fucking, who has gotten way shittier throughout the years and became like such a fucking annoying lib throughout the years. Tucker Carlson getting mad at that guy, calling MAGA people maggots, is, of course, hilarious considering Tucker has routinely considered immigrants coming into this country economic